Back in June, actress Bella Thorne was hacked, and semi-nude photos were stolen. Whoopi Goldberg, in a discussion about the hack and how Thorne handled it, made a statement that famous people cannot take nude photographs because hackers are targeting famous people, because they're famous. There was something about what Whoopi said that bothers me. The sense that this type of crime is inevitable, that it's just something that's going to happen and we can't do anything about it. Also, the lack of empathy because nude photos. That is what really bugs me the most. For some people, the thing stolen renders the crime unimportant or inevitable. That line of thought is bad for everyone, and the people who tend to think that way also tend to be the noisiest. Without a clear signal that privacy and security of personal data of any kind is paramount, then the people who steer the creation and development of the devices and products and services we use, they won't treat that security with any importance. I think that end users collectively can force companies to be more proactive about protecting the data on their devices and the services they provide, or in some cases try to force us to use. I'm looking at you, Microsoft, with Word defaulting to OneDrive instead of the local hard drive. In a previous video, I talked about email not being as private as people expect, and I covered the concept of the expectation of privacy. The too long didn't read is people expect the property they own or rent is private. For example, your house, your car, or a hotel room that you rent for a night. And it's quite clear that people have an expectation of privacy with the computers and cell phones they own and the services connected to those devices, like cloud service, cloud storage. After 2 large-scale leaks of celebrity nude photos stolen from an online storage service, the prevailing opinion amongst many of the tech-savvy individuals was, that's what you get for uploading nude photos to a cloud service. You should have expected this to happen. Essentially, blaming the victims for getting hacked. That's really an unreasonable notion for a number of reasons. First, these aren't IT security specialists. They're normal people who are sold on a service in a new industry, an industry that doesn't take its users' privacy as seriously as it should. Second, they didn't choose to upload the photos. It was the sync with other devices, the built-in automation that is billed as a convenient feature, an all-or-nothing automatic upload, designed to be out of sight, out of mind, which means that users don't get a choice. Everything gets uploaded. Third reason, a large-scale attack on privacy had never happened before. Sure, something was leaked here and there, but never on such a massive number of targets with such a narrow focus on a particular kind of private information. I'm indifferent about people taking nude photos of themselves. People are going to do what people are going to do, and that's no business of mine or anyone else's. The focus should not be on what was stolen from Thorne and the other celebrities, but the fact that a device or service that they expected to be secure and private was breached. That is worth knowing. I would like to know how the theft happened, what devices or services were compromised. There's a whole mess of questions, but ultimately it comes down to 2 questions. What can we trust, and what should we not trust? The top online storage services advertise convenience above everything else. I haven't found an online storage service with any kind of warning about not storing documents containing credit card, social security, or Medicaid numbers. Information that is private and damaging as a nude photo. These services are not bragging about high security, but they definitely don't want to discourage the expectation of privacy, otherwise people wouldn't use them. On a quick side note, while doing some shallow research, I found there is a new cloud service that does encrypt the stored data. I don't know the details of how or what features it offers. I do intend to find out more later, but it does show that there is a client base for this kind of security feature. In much more recent event, multiple YouTube and social media stars have been hacked. The hacked accounts include Shane Dawson, James Charles, King Bach, Amanda Carney. There may be more, but these are the ones that got the most attention. And I'll totally admit the series of attacks have a little in common with my two previous examples, aside from people with fame are being targeted. That's the only thing in common with the other hacks. Fame. The reason why I'm talking about this large-scale digital hijacking is because the aftermath is worth comparing to Celebgate, the mass leak of nude photos. There's a lot more empathy and no victim blaming, and I do attribute that a whole bunch to there being no nudity. There was more focus on what happened, how it happened, and what the company did in the aftermath. These people were attacked through a process called SIM swapping. The way it's done is through social engineering. This requires more acting skill than computer skill. The attacker calls a cell phone company and then passes themselves off as the account holder. And from that point, whatever the account holder can do over the phone, the attacker can do too. And this is an old school con. In the previous video where I talked about the expectation of privacy, I also told a story about a woman who spied on her ex-husband and stepchildren by using personal information she knew to convince tech support to reset all of their email passwords. She then logged into their accounts one by one and set up email forwarding to her own email address. This has also been used to convince credit card companies to issue a second business credit card to a single individual. This is really old school. It predates the internet. Being an old con, you would think that most companies would work to find some way around preventing this from happening, but no, it still works. It still works very well. Speaking of trying to stop social engineering, one of the YouTubers, Amanda Carney, who had her account hijacked, posted a tweet later saying that she was going to switch her cell phone carrier because this was the second time it had happened to her. After getting her account restored from the first time, she insisted on using all of the available ID verifications the company could use. And it still happened. Attackers still convinced someone to switch her phone number over to their SIM. Several other YouTube and social media personalities were venting later their frustration with trying to get their accounts restored. Several of them stating that the company was not responding to requests, was not giving them useful information, or was flat out ignoring them. It would seem that they all used the same cell phone company, AT&T. Another quick side note, SIM swapping is not exclusive to AT&T. It's worth noting that AT&T is currently being sued over previous SIM swapping attacks. Their competitor, T-Mobile, in an effort to fight the same kind of attack, has an option called No Port. It essentially locks the cell phone number to the current SIM. Once this feature is activated, the only way to change numbers or SIMs is to take the phone to a T-Mobile store with a government-issued photo ID. Now, my whole focus so far has been on why blaming users for getting hacked isn't consistent or reasonable. I would like to now place not blame, but responsibility on the people and organizations who should already know better: the companies. In both cases, companies failed to protect their customers. You have one company that was so focused on convenience, security was essentially superficial. For the most part, passwords on a lot of our online accounts are more like dollar store padlocks on a diamond vault. Not even a good bluff. The same focus on convenience didn't take into consideration how people use the products they buy. Not giving the user an easy way to flag photos or other data for more private and secure local storage is definitely an oversight. Now, the second company did have more options, but clearly it wasn't enough to prevent an attack from happening a second time. And it doesn't seem to be too concerned with making things correct with their customers, or stopping the problem altogether. It also seems to have a history of letting this kind of attack happen since they're already being sued over previous attacks. The companies, all companies, need to keep privacy of their customers in mind. And it always falls on the companies to deal with improving their security. Just look at banks. They have been targets for robbers and crooks for over 100 years. Hundreds of years. Still are pretty valuable targets. They invest in a lot to dissuade attacks and robberies. And when a robbery happens, they've invested in trying to make it as easy to find the robber later as possible. Sure, it doesn't always work, but it does mean that they are harder targets than they otherwise would be. And the risk-reward of robbing a bank is now more risk than reward. We as customers and users of products and services these companies are peddling have a right to get upset about breaches and data theft. I would argue that is in our best interest to get upset about it. But we have to be consistent about it. It doesn't matter if it happens to a service you don't use, or if it's just fame-ish people being targeted, or if it involves risque photos. What matters is whether or not we shouldn't trust something. If we shouldn't trust a product, a service, or an entire company. Thanks for watching, and good luck. To subscribe, click the channel icon on the top left. Top right is the previous video, and below that is a random suggestion from YouTube. Thanks again.